Past the hour, we're going to begin this morning with developing overnight news. Bernalillo County Sheriff's deputies and the SWAT team were in an Albuquerque neighborhood in the overnight hours. They say a suspect barricaded themselves in a house or apartment near Rio Bravo and Isleta. Deputies say they were there for a couple of hours. There's still no word on what started this whole thing, but they are blocking some side streets in that area. Deputies say they did take a suspect into custody. We will stay on top of that. We're also staying on top of a breaking overnight story that we first brought you yesterday on News 13. People in one Northeast Heights Albuquerque neighborhood are tired of cars crashing into yards and even homes, and it happened again early yesterday morning. They've gone to the city, so did we. News 13's Catherine Mazzone is in the Newsplex with what officials are saying they're doing to help neighbors on that dangerous street. Catherine?
Good morning, Adam. It was about 2:30 yesterday morning when neighbors say they were jolted awake by the sound of two cars crashing into one another. One ended up in a yard. Police say they might have been racing and alcohol could have been a factor. But residents say this happens all too often and they want it to stop.
We've been after the city to come and do an evaluation of this intersection on Chalwood and Indian School Road. And, you know, they just keep giving us the runaround.
Neighbors like Chris Moya say their pleas for help have been left unanswered. But the city councilor for their district, Don Harris, says he recognizes the problem. A traffic study revealed speed and driving under the influence were the main contributors to the crashes. The city could add more stop signs. They're also looking into other solutions, like a raised median, a new median, or a roundabout. But they're all costly fixes, ranging from $65,000 to $91,000. The most expensive, a roundabout, and it's what some neighbors want most.
And the roundabout, as it turns out, will cost about $1.3 million. It would take a long time to build. We don't have that money right now.
Now, Harris says he's confident changes will be set into motion in the coming months. We'll stay on this issue and let you know what happens. Adam, back to you.
All right, Catherine, thanks. Council President Ken Sanchez says certain areas of town are more vulnerable than others when it comes to dangerous streets, but it is a problem throughout the city. How he's trying to tackle a problematic street in his district coming up in our next half hour this morning. On to this, a man accused of terrorizing drivers around the city is locked up this morning. Police say the trouble started near Cooper and Juan Tabo when Stephen Vasquez was fighting with his mother in a car. When an officer approached him, he drove into an officer, then took off. Police say he carjacked a woman at the Valero on Rio Bravo and Broadway, then ditched the car and tried to carjack two others in Northeast Albuquerque. Police say he wasn't done yet.
He ran on foot and broke into a building, threatened the employees in there, grabbed a 12-inch knife, and then carjacked a third individual and made that person drive him over to the area of Central and Western Skies.
Police say they found him at his mother's house on Wednesday, then had to tase him to get him to surrender. Vasquez has been in trouble for violent crimes before. After this spree, he's adding 20 felony charges to his record. Another man convicted of driving drunk is under arrest again. Police say an officer pulled over 52-year-old Jeff Connor Thursday morning near 3rd and Central after his SUV was found stopped in the middle of the street. Connor failed a field sobriety test, but his breath test came back negative for alcohol, so he was tested for drugs. He was booked on aggravated DWI. We checked. He remains at the MDC behind bars this morning. Police say Connor's been arrested at least 10 times for DWI and convicted in 7 instances. Another repeat offender is in jail again this morning. Casey Williams was accused of hurting Corrales officer Jeremy Ramiro last year, when a high-speed chase ended in a crash. According to police, she was found in a stolen car on Lomas and San Pedro on Wednesday. A criminal complaint shows the 23-year-old told officers she got that car from her ex-boyfriend. She told them she needed somewhere to sleep and used the vehicle, but the person with Williams says they were on their way to buy meth.
I'm going to set the bond as indicated by pretrial at $7,500 cash or surety.
Police believe she was the driver in last year's crash, but prosecutors dropped the charges, citing evidence concerns. News 13 has learned the name of a driver killed in the fiery crash last Thursday. APD says Daniel Baca was killed when his car flew off the off-ramp from I-40 to Carlisle and burst into flames. The cause of that crash is still under investigation. The wreckage is badly burned, and investigators are still looking over things. They're also interviewing crash witnesses. Albuquerque police say they're making some progress in investigating a high-profile case this morning. They've identified 2 men wanted for shooting at a Good Samaritan, but they say they still need your help in finding them. Police say Trevor Traylor and Tyler Wright were part of a trio who harassed a woman at a Valero gas station at Unser and McMahon last month. When a man stepped in to stop them, they chased after him and shot at him. He wasn't hurt, but the men got away. Nicholas Chavez there has already been arrested for the crime, but Traylor and Wright are still out there. Developing now, a massive manhunt continues in Ferguson, Missouri this morning as tensions remain high. 2 officers were shot early yesterday morning in what officials are calling an ambush. The officers were standing guard during a demonstration following the news that Police Chief Thomas Jackson was stepping down. One officer was shot in the face, the other in the shoulder. Both have since been released from the hospital.
What happened last night was a pure ambush. This was not someone trying to bring healing to Ferguson. This was a damn punk.
Officers spent the day yesterday searching several neighborhoods and talking with several persons of interest. The recent act of violence has authorities on high alert. This comes a week after a Justice Department report found rampant racial discrimination within the police force. Turkish officials say they've nabbed a foreign intelligence operative suspected of helping 3 London teens escape to Syria to join ISIS. Turkey's foreign prime minister says that person works for a country that's part of a coalition against ISIS, but he adds the suspect is not a national of the European Union or the U.S. The teens left London last month and are believed to have crossed into Syria after taking a flight from London to Istanbul. Also developing this morning, top Democrats and Republicans are calling on the director of the Secret Service to give some more details on a drunken crash involving 2 agents. The agents allegedly crashed into a security barrier at the White House after drinking. The White House recently appointed Joseph Clancy to lead the agency amid a series of recent embarrassing episodes, and they say it stands by him. The latest incident occurred earlier this month at a time when other agents were right in the middle of investigating a bomb threat. 31 now, and first this morning, a revamped board that polices Albuquerque Police has its first meeting. 9 citizen complaints were on the agenda last night when the panel met, including one where a female officer is accused of using federal law enforcement database to pull a woman's address. She's then accused of giving it to that woman's ex-husband who had a restraining order out against him. The board only publicly discussed 2 of 9 agenda items because of time. They voted to approve the rest. Board members say in the future they're going to figure out a way for the public to access those findings ahead of time.
That's usually how it works when you set up a board like this. How are we going to do our job is what we're really trying to get to.
The old board was disbanded when the feds found it was ineffective. The new board president says he hopes the public will be more involved in meetings in the future. In 2 weeks now, a judge is expected to announce whether DA Carrie Brandenburg can stay on top of the case of 2 APD officers accused of murder. Brandenburg charged Keith Sandy and Dominic Perez with murder for shooting and killing a homeless man, James Boyd, last year. In court on Thursday, attorneys said Brandenburg pressed charges for revenge against APD. The department accused Brandenburg of trying to bribe burglary victims to keep them from pressing charges against her son. The DA's office, though, fired back, saying the case is about the video evidence, saying they've never had the video to see what actually happened at a police shooting. The judge should have a decision on whether Brandenburg's office can keep this case in 2 weeks. 5:33 now, neighbors in one northeast Albuquerque neighborhood say they're fed up with drivers plowing through their yards and right into their homes. But they're not the only residents in the metro seeing the dangerous consequences of reckless drivers. News 13's Catherine Mazzone spoke with city leaders about how they're trying to make these streets safer. Catherine?
That's right, Adam. We told you yesterday about 2 cars crashing into one another at Chelwood Park and Indian School. One landed in a resident's yard. We talked to the city and found there are solutions in the works. But what about another problem area we've told you about before? Atrisco on the west side.
I think the biggest problem here on the west side is this area continues to grow and we don't have the adequate roads, we don't have the adequate river crossings. So when the interstate gets backed up, many people tend to want to use Atrisco as an alternate route to get to their work or coming home from work.
City Council President Ken Sanchez says the road has been an issue for years and the neighborhood has seen a number of crashes, including a fatal crash involving 2 of his close friends. Sanchez says a couple of community meetings have resulted in several ideas, like reducing the number of lanes from 2 to 1 or adding speed tables. One would back up traffic, and engineers have told Sanchez speed tables are not effective. Emergency crews warn against speed humps because of the number of vehicles that travel the road. So what is the solution? Sanchez says they may have to wait until after another road project is complete to figure that out.
I'd hate to rush into a project and get something done when it's going to create a bigger problem down the road. So we're still working with residents, we're still working with the traffic engineers and the emergency response teams to make sure that what we do is the right thing for this community.
Now, along with the other neighborhood we told you about last half hour, Sanchez says this is something happening citywide, and speed is often a factor. Back to you, Adam.
Catherine, thank you. The city also says they hope to have solutions for these two neighborhoods soon. On to this, a convicted cop killer says he now wants out of prison after 33 years. Joel Lee Compton set out to convince the parole board he's been rehabilitated yesterday. Compton killed Gerald Klein in 1983 at the Tewa Motor Lodge on Central after Klein responded to a call about a suspicious man with a rifle. Compton came up for parole in 2013 after serving 30 years and was denied. It's unclear when the parole board will announce its decision. 5:35 now. APS says more students ditched classes last year, but they're working on a way to help curb that problem. The jump in truancy is significant. In 2012, the rate was 15%, but it dropped significantly a year later to just 9%. However, last school year, the number skyrocketed back up to 15.5%. APS can't say why the rate dropped one year and then rose the next. Last year, APS launched a pilot program in 13 schools where they established an intervention plan after finding the reason for absences.
Social workers with the families, the kids in the schools bring the kids together at early intervention. So around 3 to 5 unexcused absences is the prime time.
APS says the program was successful in those schools, so it's now expanding the program to 23 schools. New developments in a bill that would take driver's licenses away from teenagers who skip class. It's on its way to the state Senate now. The proposal calls for suspending or denying driving privileges of any public school student from 8th through the 12th grade who racks up 10 or more unexcused absences in a year. The House has already passed that measure. The PED reports that 21.5% of high school kids missed school last school year. The year before, the rate was a little lower at about 20%. Lawmakers are also looking at a way to solve the immigrant driver's license dilemma. Some are proposing a measure that would split the state's driver's license system into two. Breaking it down for you, the proposal aims to give undocumented immigrants driver's licenses while ensuring other licenses comply with the Real ID Act. A Real ID license would be given to those with U.S. citizenship. Undocumented immigrants would get an alternative license. Last month, the House passed a bill that would put the brakes on giving licenses to undocumented immigrants altogether, but that's not likely to pass the Senate. Also heading to the Senate this morning, a bill to allow the Public Regulation Commission to regulate ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft in New Mexico. The House passed the measure last night 56-8. Uber and Lyft have grown in popularity over the past year in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Last year, the PRC ordered the two companies to stop operating, but they didn't. New this morning, the former chapter of Sigma Alpha Epsilon that was kicked off OU campus is now planning to seek legal action against the university. They also plan to sue OU President David Boren. The group says they're outraged over Boren branding all SAE members there as racist. Attorneys for SAE says the two students who were expelled over the racist chant in the news recently have apologized sincerely, and they say the incident is now being exploited. Meanwhile, at the University of Washington, members of a black student union say members of their local SAE chapter yelled racial remarks during a protest outside their fraternity. That is now under investigation. There is new video to show you this morning of a fight in Brooklyn, New York. Take a look at your screen here. Cell phone video already viewed thousands of times online shows 6 or 7 teen girls pummeling another girl at a McDonald's. Several bystanders saw that assault, but nobody stopped it or called police. Investigators say the victim and her mother are not cooperating with them. Community leaders say they are working now to identify every